pleasant good morning. It's Thursday, the 23rd day of March in the year 2023. My name is Christopher Jones, welcoming you to the Leader of the Opposition's weekly press conference. Before we begin the statements, permit me to introduce the members of the panel. To my immediate right is Mr. Reyes Rupnarain, a Central Executive Member of the PNCR. To his right is the former Prime Minister of Guyana, Comrade Hamilton Green. To his right is the Leader of the Opposition and Leader of the People's National Congress Reform, Comrade Aubrey C. Norton. And to his right is Mr. Elson Lowe, a member of the Central Executive Committee of the PNCR. The first part of today's statement will be read by Comrade Reyes Rupnarain.
Assalamu alaikum. Ramadan Mubarak, Ramadan Mubarak, Ramadan Mubarak. Today marks the start of the holy month of Ramadan for Muslims across the world. As we pray for mercy, forgiveness, and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we beg that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take us closer towards His pleasure and keep us away from His anger and punishment. The holy and glorious month of Ramadan is with us, and once more the People's National Congress Reform and the opposition embrace the opportunity to greet all Guyanese, and more especially the members of the Muslim community, as we strive to give meaning to the noble ideas of Ramadan: struggle, sacrifice, abstinence, and forbearance. The party believes that as Muslims practice these ideals and they are transmitted to the wider society, Guyana will be the beneficiary, as the minds of our people will become more attuned to the principle of building better lives and, by extension, a better society. The need to struggle for these ideas is even more palpable, and as we seek to grapple with the multifarious difficulties which beset our country. The need for continuous struggle against oppression, injustice, and for social justice and peace should be emphasized by all as we together observe this holy month of Ramadan. The PNCR and the opposition are fully aware that at the end of Ramadan, as we celebrate the end of a month of fasting with Eid al-Fitr, the Muslim community emerges energized and invigorated from the month of fasting, and we are sure that these qualities will enhance the capacity of the Muslim community to continue to make increased contributions to the building of Guyana. Ramadan Kareem, Ramadan Mubarak. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rupert Rupnarain.
Reyes Rupnarain.
My apologies, Reyes Rupnarain. Thank you very much. We now move to Mr. Elson Lowe for the second part of today's statement.
No, me.
Okay. So we'll first have the Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Aubrey C. Norton, with his statement. Mr. Norton.
Virginusian residents demand the fixing of coca. On a recent visit to Virginusian by the opposition, residents complain that truckline canal that drains Virginusian is completely silted up. There are photographs available for you to see. The residents are demanding that the government hurtle to have the situation rectified. In addition, residents pointed out that the coca for the said canal is in a state of disrepair. Photographs are also available for this. The residents are calling on the government to repair the coca, having noted that as soon as it rains, the area in the community is flooded, affecting the livelihood of the residents. Opposition Shadow Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Vincroy Jordan MP, has dispatched a letter to the Minister of Agriculture requesting his speedy intervention. Residents also expressed concern that the subvention allocated to the NDC for 2022 was not, to their knowledge, spent. They are seeking an explanation as to why it was not utilized. Was it returned to the consolidated fund? And what is the present status of the subvention? Commissioner Ramson's response to our public statement does not help his case. We have noted a response from the Commissioner of Information, Charles Ramson Sr., to our public statement calling on him to step down for his lack of fitness for the job. We have also noted the several public comments in support of our position. Not unexpectedly, Mr. Ramson responded to none of the legal arguments we made. He could not, as his interpretation of the Access to Information Act 2011 is not merely flawed, but extremely wayward and wrong-headed. Nowhere does the Act state, as Mr. Ramson believes, that an applicant for information can apply to his office only after his or her request has been denied by a public agency. Nowhere does the Act state, as Mr. Ramson believes, that an applicant must first verify that the requested information is unavailable on open sources, such as an agency website, before his office can intervene. Commissioner Ramson is beyond reason and persuasion that the Office of the Commissioner of Information was established by the Parliament to serve as a channel through which members of the public can apply and acquire information as their first option. At a time when the regime is becoming more disdainful of the public and Parliament, and is becoming more secretive, and is becoming less transparent and accountable, and is becoming more incompetent and corrupt, a properly functioning and competent Office of the Commissioner of Information becomes a critical agent of change on behalf of the people. Mr. Ramson's continued occupation of the position renders the office useless, a waste of public funds, and a disservice to the people of Guyana.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aubrey C. Norton. We now move to Mr. Elson Lowe for his statement.
Thank you very much, and good morning, members of the press. The absence of good governance in Guyana has reached a crisis point. As our oil wealth continues to increase, Guyanese are demanding a much higher quality. They are worried that without change, the scope for corruption, financial mismanagement, and waste, missed development opportunities, and a natural resource curse will rapidly expand. In this situation, Guyana, while being one of the world's fastest growing economies, Guyanese have very little in their pantries, despite the fact that Guyana is one of the world's fastest growing economies. Life is becoming more difficult for Guyanese. The absence of good governance in Guyana has reached a crisis point. There is increasing rejection of the necessity for transparency and accountability by the PUP regime. The PUP stands alone in acknowledging the absence of transparency and accountability. Guyanese will continue to voice their rejection of the PUP's secret and unconstitutional agreements and the wheeling and dealing by Bayer Jagdeo, the country's most distrusted and incompetent politician. Guyanese must continue to demand parliamentary oversight of major government decisions. Guyanese must continue to demand to see all agreements and documents in a timely fashion. The people must continue to demand genuine public consultations and scrutiny. With reference to the new model PSA, therefore, for the government to allow a measly 2 weeks for public comments is simply ridiculous and disdainful of the people of Guyana, the owners of the country's natural endowment. We hereby call for the PSA to be laid in the National Assembly and to be reviewed by a select committee, and for at least 2 months for public submissions and discussions. Guyana is a large country, and it is virtually impossible to consult a wide cross-section of the Guyanese people in 2 weeks. Guyana's size, geography, and limited infrastructure dictate that in order to properly engage with the public, any government should set aside much more time for consultation. The PUP just does not care what people in our hinterland and other outlying regions think. In addition, the regime's own desire to be secretive and corrupt does not allow them to want national consultations. We are witnessing a pattern of rushing important documents through. Let us recall our experience with the Natural Resources Fund Act. the PPP is clearly seeking to undermine Guyanese institutions so that the state is able to facilitate its operations as a kleptocracy. The new petroleum exploration and production bill must not be similarly rushed through parliamentary and public oversight. Instead of this contemptuous approach to the Guyanese public and the National Assembly, we believe that at least 60 days should be given for comments and objections when dealing with agreements, investment codes, and laws this vital. The opposition will move a motion in the National Assembly demanding that consultations on matters of national importance must be codified by law so that this process is not at the discretion of the PPP. Left unchecked, rushing major agreements, investment codes, and legislation to completion has the potential to cost Guyanese tens of billions of US dollars through incompetence, ignorance, and corruption. Only through adopting a structured approach, such as those codified in the US Congressional Review or Administrative Procedure Acts, can we arrest the current relentless slide towards financial recklessness and kleptocracy. The Ethnic Relations Commission must free itself from the grip of the PPP. After an absence of 2 years, the PPP government has finally made the effort to reconstitute the Ethnic Relations Commission. This is the second case of the PPP's indifference in appointing commissioners, the first case being in 2011 to 2015 under the Donald Ramadan presidency. It was under the APNU-AFC government that the ERC was finally reactivated. In reconstituting the ERC this week, Guyanese can only hope that the PPP has lost its conniving One Guyana mission proposal, has cast its conniving One Guyana mission proposal into the dustbin, commission proposal into the dustbin. The nation's focus should be on getting the ERC to fully understand its constitutional mandate and to effectively work to fulfill it. Concerns have already been publicly voiced that most of the new commissioners are closely affiliated with the PPP or are government employees. However, the opposition challenges them to put the national good above their political and other allegiances, to put the common interests above their self-interests, and to thereby transform the ERC into an effective agent in building good ethnic relations. Let us, however, advise the ERC that building good ethnic relations, though important, is only one of its 3 interrelated constitutional mandates. Equally critical are its 2 mandates involving 1, the identification, prevention, and elimination of ethnic discrimination, and 2, the promotion of equality of opportunity regardless of ethnicity. These last 2 mandates demand that the Commission must also focus on governmental policies and institutions that control the distribution of state resources and opportunities, such as jobs, contracts, subventions, and cash transfers. The ERC must seek to instigate policy, administrative, cultural, and structural changes within all state agencies to ensure their operations enhance ethnic relations, eliminate ethnic discrimination, and promote equal opportunity for all. The ERC must also design hard programs to build harmonious inter-community and intra-community relations in the country across ethnic lines. Additionally, the ERC must look to work with the Ministry of Education to develop multicultural programs for lower school children. Yes, while education in STEM is important, we in Guyana must also seek to educate our primary schoolers to function in a society with ethnic, gender, and social diversity. To effectively fulfill its vast mandate, the ERC would require much technical and professional assistance from like-minded organizations such as the UK Equality and Human Rights Commission. In fact, we in the opposition hereby recommend that such cooperation be arranged as a matter of necessity and urgency. Should the new commissioners take on their task with the required seriousness and vision, they can count on the support of the opposition and surely the Guyanese people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Elson Lowe, and thank you very much, leader of the PNCR and leader of the opposition, Comrade Aubrey Norton. On the question of father of the nation, we invite the former Prime Minister of Guyana, former Mayor of the City of Georgetown, and former General Secretary of the People's National Congress Reform, Comrade Hamilton Green, to add his voice to the question, the father of the nation. Comrade Hamilton Green.
Thank you. Traveling from the East Bank into Jemera and Georgetown, there's a large, perhaps the largest billboard in the country, stating that Dr. Cherry Jagan is the father of the nation. Let me say one, I've had for years a cordial relations with Dr. Jagan, very charming man, energetic, and I believe committed to those things he believed in. Second, I recommend that we read in yesterday's Kaichur News a letter by his son, Chedi Joey Jagan, where he extols the virtues of his father and at the same time is critical of the fact that the ruling cabal is attempting to use Dr. Jagan's name for dishonorable purposes. I share every word in Joey's letter, but to name him father of the nation is an absurdity. First, Jagan would not have wanted that kind of publicity because, as Joey said, he was a man of humility and compassion. Secondly, if you go through the history of this country, you'll find that Dr. Jagan made some missteps which could not qualify him for that position of being father of the nation. I believe that it is good to state that, like a good preacher, you honor him, but to canonize him to sainthood is another matter. After the Waddington Constitution in 1953, Jagan began his errors, all because he did not accept that in a country like Guyana, we should play not along the lines of any of the superpowers, but between. On the 2nd of June, just weeks after they got into office, the Commonwealth requested all countries to issue a statement of loyalty to the new queen for her coronation. Dr. Jagan refused to do this, and Forbes Bonham said that was a mistake. Later that same month, June 53, Ethel and Julius Rosenberg were executed in the United States for treason, for allegedly selling atomic secrets to the Soviet Union. Again, one advised to advert to the sanctity of life and ended there. Jagan, on the other hand, ranted and raved about the integrity of the trial, etc., etc. Next, as a result of the conflicts within the party, where he was ostensibly the leader and Burnham the chairman, there were incidents at international level that Jagan seemed to ignore. In 1955, at Bandung, leaders in Africa, Asia, and elsewhere met to deal with the new emergence of imperialism, what they described as the non-aligned movement. Jagan showed no interest in this process and fast-tracked to 1961 in Belgrade, when the non-aligned movement was certified. Again, Jagan showed no interest. It was Burnham who, when he got into office, ensured that we honored the men who crafted and initiated the non-aligned movement. And if you go to the gardens opposite to the opposite St. George's Cathedral, it is there. It was Burnham's initiative who honored those four great men: Nasser, of Egypt, Bronze Tito of Yugoslavia, Nehru of India, and Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana. I make this point to say that Dr. Chedi Jagan obviously had an interest in supporting one side of the vicious Cold War. In 1961, in the famous rocking chair meeting with John F. Kennedy, who wanted to help him, he was asked the question, "Are you a communist?" He couldn't answer. Before that, we saw elements within the PP which suggested that the party and the government and the people of Ghana should go in a particular direction. Burnham's position has always been, and I believe that is the position of the PNC unto this day, that we shall be pawns of neither the East nor the West. Dr. Jagan did not understand it. So how could he therefore be termed the father of the nation? A father seeks to protect his family and to ensure that the events that he deals with are such that it promotes the welfare, the dreams, and the objectives of that family. The objective of Guyana at that time was to secure independence or be part of the wider federation. An interesting book, which I'm sure Dr. Jagan would have read, titled Annexation to the United States versus Confederation of the West Indies. All of the leaders then opted to move towards Confederation of the West Indies. So in 1958, when the West Indies Federation was established, for reasons which he never explained, he kept Guyana out of that union. It collapsed in 1962 for reasons which refer to the problems in Jamaica, etc. But the point I want to make here is, how could you deem a man the father of the nation who shied away from a union of the Caribbean states? It was in 1955 at Dickinson Bay that the three Bs got together and rekindled the idea of what we know today as CARICOM. They met at Dickinson Bay, Burnham, Byrd, and Barrow. Byrd of Antigua, Barrow of Barbados. At that time, because of the pressures of the Cold War, the other leaders shied away from such a meeting. But those three men must be held in reverence for their courage and perspicacity to make the Caribbean a nation state. There are other issues which I would leave a little later, but the absurdity is compounded by this fact. After the 61 elections, there was an independence conference in 62. The three leaders could not agree, Degar, Burnham, and Jagan. When they met again, Burnham suggested that we go back to the people of Ghana and put the main issues to them in the form of a plebiscite. Dr. Jagan, on the other hand, said his exact words, "I have great faith and confidence in the British sense of fair play and justice." And he left it to the British to break the indecisions of the three leaders and make a decision. When the British came out with positions which Jagan did not like, which was one, elections before independence, he wanted independence now. Two, retention of the voting age at 21. And three, a new system of proportional representation, because even though Jagan got 20 seats out of the 35 seats, the figure showed that he did not get a majority of voters. and that the first pass of the system did not reflect the will of the people. When the British came out with the decision, he was angry and came back with what he said, a hurricane of violence. Those who suffered the pain at that period will know what happened. But the absurdity is this. In November 1965, Dr. Jagan was persuaded to attend the Independence Conference at Lancaster House in London to iron out the details, to work out the modalities, to settle the major issues so that we can move to independence. Dr. Jagan was not present at that historic conference when the details and the date for independence was fixed. How can that person therefore be the father of a nation which was technically established at a date and time that he had nothing to do with, and in fact refused to be part of the dialogue? Duncan Sands, his own party members said, Chedi, attend the meeting so you can be part of that historic moment when the date for independence was fixed. My position is I will call as an elder upon the leader of the People's National Congress and the leader of the opposition to respectfully ask that that sign be torn down. I don't know how much it costs, but that sign is part of the propaganda blitz to fool our young people, to deceive visitors that Jagan was the father of the nation. I say no more. The friend to my left a moment ago adverted to the oncoming month of Ramadan. It is on the heels of what the Christians will celebrate as Easter. It was Burnham who gave public holidays to the Hindu and the Muslim community in this country. Jagan had 7 years to do it. He never made a move in that direction. How can he therefore be baptized father of the nation? There are issues which I can deal with, but for time, I would pause and hope that the media can ask questions, and I hope that we get national support to remove that abomination, that obnoxious sign describing Jagan as father of the nation. A man I liked, a good man, but you could not elevate him to that position as father of the nation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Comrade Hamilton Green. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, you've heard the statement from the leader of the People's National Congress, Reform and leader of the opposition. As well, you heard from Mr. Elson Lowe, and Ramadan greetings from Mr. Woodbray. The floor is now open for questions. Please ensure that you indicate the media house in which you represent. And ladies and gentlemen, via the Zoom platform, you can use the hand raise signal, and I'll give the floor to you. All right, we recognize Ms. Nazima Ragabir, President of the Ghana Press Association. Go ahead, Nazima.
Thank you, Chris. Here in my capacity as a journalist. Thank you very much. Good morning. 2 questions. One to Mr. Lowe. Would the party be providing any feedback on the petroleum agreement, even given your concerns and the 14-day? Would you be providing any written submissions on it? And for the leader of the opposition, your statement about Commissioner Ramson, are you going to be pursuing getting the information otherwise? Are you going to be challenging Mr. Ramson on your request? Thank you.
Thank you, Nazima.
Thank you very much, Nazima. We are currently reviewing the PSA, and there are a couple of areas that we will raise as it concerns a written submission. Once we have decided on our approach there, you'll be the first to know.
Thanks for the question, Nazima. We have looked at the law. We are convinced that Charge Ramsey Sr. is totally incorrect, and we believe another opportunity should be given for him to operate in keeping with the law. So we are likely to ask him again to respond to the question we asked. And I don't know if you recall, but we were trying to get the logs of NCN in covering the budget debate, because during the budget debate, the government virtually refused to cover the opposition. And we believe as a state-owned entity, the NCN is obligated to cover every member of parliament in a fair way. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And in our attempt to get information from Commissioner Ramson resulted in Commissioner Ramson, even though he is a lawyer, mutilating the law to achieve its own personal and political objective.
Thank you, Mr. Norton. The floor is still open. Please indicate by raising your hand. All right, members of the media, if there is a difficulty with utilizing the hand raise signal, you can just go ahead and ask the question. All right.
A very good morning to everyone. Sorry?
Go ahead, Mr. Harris.
A very good morning, Adam Harris. This question is for Elder Hamilton Green. Sir, you detailed a series of reasons why Dr. Jagan should not be dubbed Father of the Nation. Following your analysis, sir, does anyone qualify to be so dubbed?
Well, let me put it this way. I mentioned Burnham a moment ago, but that's a matter for public debate. And let me say this. If there's anyone, it should be Forbes Burnham. He took us out of the murky waters of the Cold War, and this generation may not appreciate the intensity, the difficulties of having the guile, the intelligence, and the wisdom to navigate independence through the difficulties of the Cold War. But what you see here, not to answer your question directly, is an oligarchy who's trying to burnish their image by making Jagan this father of the nation. It is not new. And Adam, you would know that on May Day 1969, as a result of long discussions and dialogue, the airport, which was then known as Atkinson Airport, named after an American entrepreneur, an engineer, and developer, it was named after Amerindian brothers, where the sheetrocks found in some of the rivers in Berbice and elsewhere, they found these paintings, these carvings, which was called Timali, but because of translation problems, is now Timeri. Burnham ensured that that airport, the main international airport, was named to honor our indigenous people. Without discussion, without dialogue, without explanation, this oligarchy, this cabal at the PPP, named it Jagan, Chedi Jagan Airport. And when a noise was made, they then went to Parliament to use their majority and had it certified, thereby insulting, paying scant regard to the very people they are now talking about helping. I spoke over the past few days to prominent Amerindian leaders. And they are very upset. But, you know, they say nothing these days. So to answer your question, if there's somebody to name as father of the nation, it is Forbes Burnham.
It is also important to know that when it was protested with them naming it Cheddi Jagan International Airport, they sought to say it will not be Cheddi Jagan International Airport. It would have been Cheddi Jagan International Airport, Temeri, so that Temeri will still be used. But from practice, Temeri has been dropped totally, which is an indication of their true intention.
Exactly. All right. Members of the media, we're still open.
If there is nobody else, could I ask another question, sir?
Sure, Mr. Harris, go ahead.
This question is for the opposition leader, sir.
Go ahead.
Currently, sorry?
Go ahead.
You talk about approaching Charles Ramson Sr. for information, sir. Given the history and the records that no one has ever been able to elicit a comment, an answer from Mr. Ramson over the years, why did you feel that you would have been different and you would have got him to provide you with a response?
Well, first of all, I don't know that I felt that I would have gotten a response. I believe as leader of the opposition, it's an obligation on me to test the laws in Guyana. And the law says that there is an entitlement to have this information. And so the commission was approached to be able to get it. I was not at all fooled in believing that Charles Ramson Sr. would have delivered the information. But as the government talks about democracy and honoring the law, it's another illustration that there is no respect for the rule of law. And therefore, I thought it was important for for it to be tested so that the Guyanese people will see and recognize that the government pays lip service to transparency and accountability, but it's a very secretive, authoritarian government that has no interest in sharing information and consulting the people of Guyana.
Thank you very much, Mr. Norton. Ms. Garnett, I recognize you, and I noted the question that you asked in the chat, whether or not questions are being entertained outside of the statement. I'll indicate to you that not at this time. We're only entertaining questions based on the statement at this time. So go ahead with your question, Ms. Garnett. Ms. Garnett? All right, Ms. Garnett, Hazid. So the floor is still open for questions. All right, so it appears that we have exhausted questions based on the statements. So at this time, we'll open the floor for questions outside of the statement. I recognize Mr. Vickery, Jagan Vickery.
Good morning, panel. Mr. Norton, this is in regards to the United States Department report. It highlighted several things. Among those were possible corruption or corruption within the Guyana police force. What are your thoughts on the report and also the AG coming out to say that it was some of the claims were erroneous?
First of all, the AG is erroneous. It is well known that there was no proper investigation into the issues raised by BASCOM. It is well known that the Ghana police force is corrupt. shortly we will release for you. I was visiting in Virgin Nugent, and the young men in Virgin Nugent, they have, in which the police goes into Virgin Nugent, pick up their motorcycles, put it in a vehicle, take it to the police station. They then have to go. Remember, they're not committing a crime. These are parked motorcycles. So in the first place, they're really stealing people's property. They are removing people's property illegally. Then they carry it. The video will show you they go into the vehicle, etc. Then these young men have got to go to the police station and pay the policemen $60,000 per motorcycle. That isn't anywhere in the law. So it is clearly corruption at the highest level. At the highest level in this police force. Only recently somebody complained to me that they were on the right side of the law, and they beat to the very senior levels of the police force and asked that this matter be dealt with in keeping with the law and properly. And they were told that they had to pay, because we don't know how long we can be in these positions. And so the corruption has become the norm. As I engage people in the communities, I was recently, the last time I was at Purika, the police complained that there were certain policemen that are linked to the People's Progressive Party that are overruling their seniors in the Guyana police force, and they are daily involved in corrupt practices. Look, if you bring Stevie Wonder to Guyana, you will see corruption. So I believe the report is accurate, and the evidence all around suggests corruption. A policeman will stop you. Will stop you. And then when they recognize you, you say, oh, it's you. Well, have a race with the boys. Now you imagine if it wasn't the leader of the opposition, what they would have been saying. And so, and here I'm not solely blaming the police. It is said that the fish rots from the head. And if there are allegations against Barra Jack Deo about fraud and bribery and corruption, and the police force cannot investigate it, then the police would recognize that some people can do illegal things and get away with it. Why then can't we? So in essence, it is the political system that is corrupt, that is allowing this level of corruption to dominate the force. When we were in government, we began in a very structured way to bring the police force in order. We train investigators so that they could investigate and solve crime. The government comes to power, take the best investigators, send them all around the interior, put back people who there were serious allegations of corruption against at the CID. And so the entire system is deteriorating because the police force is corrupt. And they are full well aware that their political masters are corrupt and will come to ask them to protect those who are involved in illegalities, and that gives them the opening to be as corrupt as the political leadership.
Just to follow up, Mr. Norton. The police, this is not the first time a report like this or from U.S. State Department would have highlighted these things within the Guyana police force. What do you've listed all these different things, and it's been happening for years. Bribery, it's a thing with them basically. What do you think can be done to not necessarily eradicate corruption, but what do you think could be a solution to this problem?
First of all, you have to change the government. The government isn't disposed to good governance, democracy, and the rule of law. Once you change the government, you can now begin to, first of all, give leadership at the political level that suggests that you are not corrupt, that you are not involved in illegalities, and therefore you can discipline those below you. That's your first thing. The second thing is that you have to begin the training of policemen, I would say retraining, and create the conditions so that they believe they can live a proper life without corruption. Very important in that process is to give them a livable wage. We have been saying that one of the first things we will do for Guyanese is to ensure that they can earn a livable wage. So I do believe the fact that they are underpaid contributes to corruption. Also, you have to work on changing the culture, because what the PPP has done over the years is to transform Guyana into a hustle. Everybody on a hustle, and when legitimate things come, they look as if they are illegitimate, because what in essence has happened is that the government has institutionalized illegalities, bribery, and corruption to the point where that becomes the norm. So one has to change back to a society that challenges wrong, a society that challenges illegality, people who are prepared to stand up and say no, and who lived their lives, did their job, avoided corruption. And then the government does a thing that has to be changed. If you keep giving bonus to policemen, that doesn't contribute to their pension. What contributes to their pension is significant increases in their salary, so that by the time they retire and they get the percentage of the salary, it will be enough for them to live their lives. But if you have a situation where for political purposes you are giving bonuses, then those policemen will start to look to say, look, I'm going to retire and I can need money, and they become involved in corrupt activities. So you need a comprehensive approach in which you transform the culture, you improve the livelihood of people, you develop a nexus between the community and the police so that they could work together, and there is trust between the population and the police, and you are likely in that circumstance to improve the performance of the police, to create a new culture and a new approach in which policemen see themselves as enforcing the law rather than operating at the whims and fancies of the government. And therefore, the next important thing is to depoliticize the Guyana police force. If policemen know they are trumping up charges against the political opponents, and if they are instructed by the government to do that, what will stop them from trumping up charges against people who they have personal problems with? And so the depoliticization of the Guyana police force, the establishment of an independent Guyana police force in which policemen know that if people violate the law and they take action against them, they wouldn't be victimized by the government. And so there are a number of measures, including depoliticization of the police force, that are needed to ensure that we get a better police force, and a police force that serves the people of Guyana. There are too many cases in the country in which politics play a role. Recently, there was a murder in Linden, and Lindeners had to be speaking out because it is alleged that the father of the man who committed the crime is close to the PPP. It was further alleged that that person was using their political clout so that the person cannot be arrested. And if you have that kind of situation, then people will watch it and say, law ain't important. I think we have to look at all of these dimensions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Norton. Ms. Tamika Garnett, I recognize you. Ms. Garnett?
Hi, good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Tamika Garnett from the Garnett Chronicle. My question, I want to go back to an issue from last week. Comment that was made by Mr. Hines pertaining to the situation with Mr. Ogunzai. Mr. Hines referred to a number of PNCR members as slave catchers for coming out and speaking out against Mr. Ogunzai's comments. Can Mr. Norton say how he views these comments from Mr. Hines calling the members of his party slave catchers? And does he believe it's an attack on his members that should be fully condemned?
First of all, you know, when the Chronicle is asking me something, I have to go back and check it. Because the last time Chronicle asked me about a statement I made, when I went and checked it, I didn't make the statement. And I came here and said to you, Ms. Garnett, that I didn't make such a statement and you just left it. So the credibility is in question. I didn't hear the statement, but on this issue of what the WPA say and what they don't say, the WPA is entitled to say what they want to say. As a political party, we will deal with what we think we need to deal with, which we have done in the last press conference, and for us it is time to move on.
Thank you. Any further questions? All right, the floor is still open. I see no other.
Please, quick.
Go ahead.
Now, sir, local government elections is coming on. We know that the AFC is not contesting. We notice that the PPP has already identified candidates for certain areas. Has the party prepared a list? Does it have specific candidates contesting in some of these NDCs and municipalities, sir?
I would say that we are operating on two parallel tracks. One, we are looking at all the factors surrounding the elections, but two, we have been preparing, we have identified candidates. I don't want you to conclude that because we would have done that, we are participating. We are still looking at a number of things, but we have done the political work that is necessary, that if we have to participate, we can participate. We have already made it very clear that we are not going to allow the PPP to walk into our strongholds. So we know for sure we have candidates there, and we have been working on candidates across the country, and we will be ready if we need to participate in the local government elections.
A quick follow-up then, sir. You talk about not being sucked into this thing and all of that. But, sir, there were some comments coming out of the NDC for BV trial, what have you, where it is believed that some people are not acting in the interest of the party who identified them to the position. And none other than Darren made such a statement, sir. That area is one of the strongholds too. Is it likely that some of those people on the council would be identified by your party, sir, to contest in the event that you're participating?
First of all, I would say the persons who are at that council that have served our party and have served the NDC properly will be considered. Those that we believe, based on our interaction with the people of BV, that have not been serving the party in good stead, we will not consider them. Our party is a party that has to serve our people. We are informed by the positions of our people. And we know for sure, I can say it to you for sure, that the last meeting I had with them in BV people and the councillors believe at least 2 persons served them in good stead and should be considered. And we will look at all the variables. The most we can promise you is that we will offer BV the best of people who can serve them. And if we believe that people didn't serve them in the way that they should be served, we are not prepared to endorse them. We condemn what we believe is an attempt to silence Mr. McCrae, who is not from our party, but our understanding is that some people who are involved in certain unacceptable practices have gotten people to assault Mr. McCrae. We condemn that. We do not believe it should happen. I've spoken to Comrade McCrae. I believe, like any other Guyanese, Comrade McCrae has a right to state his positions. And this PPP culture of when people don't do what you want them to do, you use violence against them, is one we will continuously condemn.
Jagan Vickery.
Yeah, just two questions, 2 final questions for me for the day. The first question is, a number of ministers of government came out and spoke about basically calling out discrimination. Members of the People's Progressive Party, what are your thoughts on that? And secondly,
they came out and talk about. They came out and talk about what? I didn't hear what you said.
I'm sorry. They were on the thing is World Discrimination Day. Many of them condemned acts of and called out this acts of racism, basically. That was my first question. What are your thoughts on that? And secondly, what's going on in Region 9 with regards to the building, the Region 9 office? Can you give us an update on what's happening there? Is demolition still going on? Is it on a halt? What's going on?
Okay. First of all, let me start with the racism. The PPP knows full well it's a racist party. And therefore, it will do everything to go out there to say it isn't. But we should look at the evidence. It is the evidence that should determine. I said to people, if you want to see racism, you don't have to go to the Commissioner of Information. You just drive from Ithaca to Georgetown and check who the contractors are. And if for every 10 you find 2 that are not from the PPP, I will accept there is no racism. But everywhere you go, there is racism. I'm at present waiting on a report in which 2 children from Caneview, Mocha, apparently ended up on the side of where they're building the road, and I'm reliably informed, I'm not saying this is ethnic, reliably informed that the 2 children they pelt them with a brick, damaging one of the children. Now, it is the culture that this government is inculcating that will cause contractors, whether they are African or Indo-Guyanese, working in the Mocha area, to believe that they could assault children. I'm waiting on the report, I'll deal with that. The PPP has to run around to try and fool people because they know full well that they are practicing racism. We have said to them, if you aren't, put out the names and the ethnicity of every contractor that you give contracts to. Side by side with that, put the amount or the cost of the contract. And then they won't have to run around and say anything. Just be transparent, and it will be established that you are corrupt. It will be established that you are racist. And so the minister running around, and in itself is an acceptance that they need to cover down the truth. by having these ministers running around talking about a lack of discrimination. You have in there Mark Phillips, the Prime Minister, who is of African Guyanese descent. Put him out there and let him read out the list of the contractors and tell us how many of them are indigenous people, how many of them are African Guyanese, how many of them are Indo-Guyanese, how many of them are Chinese, and you will see the discrimination. But they cannot do, that's a simple task for them to undertake. They have all the records. The only worry you got to have is if they can put out the correct records, because you know they have a way of distancing themselves from the truth. But if they can put out the records and show the contracts that exist, then there wouldn't be any question. They won't have to run around and cover anything. There are 1,000 contracts. Tell us how many contracts each group would have gotten, and right away they would put the case to rest. But the fact that they're running around and making noise is to conceal the reality that there is discrimination at the various levels. They are now running around talking about African Guyanese contractors and putting up this facade of they seeking to work with African Guyanese contractors. If this government is serious about dealing with the discrimination in contract, they would have already put mechanisms in place to enable indigenous peoples to get contracts, to enable African Guyanese to get contract, to enable poor Indians to get contract. Because while there is discrimination against African Guyanese and indigenous people, there is also discrimination within the ethnic group. For instance, only yesterday I had complaints that the PPP elite, that little group, they will access everything or most things, but the wider Indian community isn't accessing it. And so the greed of the PPP results in discrimination even against poor Indo-Guyanese. So discrimination is becoming a culture, and a lot of it is occasioned by greed. A lot of it is occasioned by the fact that the political elite in the PPP has no respect for anybody. And so they will have to keep running around trying to cover the tracks, but the tracks cannot be covered. The evidence is too much in the glare.
Update on the letter.
On the question of the building in the Rupununi, we continue to occupy it. We will continue to seek recourse through the law, because really and truly what has happened in the Rupununi is the destruction of property by the political elite there, and that is a violation of the law. Unfortunately, you are aware that the police charged 2 of our members for, I think, damaging a padlock and something they claimed they would have lost. But in the first place, if you didn't break into our property and got in there, then you could not have lost anything. So we see it as the usual trump-up charges, and would want to refocus this society on recognizing that there's need for legal action against the REO and the contractor, and to point out that this very REO, there is a clear allegation that he shot a young woman in the Rupununi, and we are told that the DPP tell them not to proceed with charges. I do not know where the DPP could get the power in a criminal matter in which a young lady was shot, and they just decide that no charges will be brought against the REO. I think it is ridiculous, and we will have to continue to pursue it. The PPP, unfortunately, is institutionalizing this culture where people close to them can commit crimes, but then they use the state system to ensure they don't face the consequences of their crimes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Norton, just a follow-up. Were you able to recover any one of the missing the documents that you had and also some other equipment that was stored in the building?
Thief man don't bring back things just, sir. When the government sent people, look, they knew full well that the 11 barrels came for us to give to poor indigenous people and poor people in the community, and they stole the barrels. The police is so ridiculous, they're not going to investigate and go after it because the PPB believe that if we are able to help those people, it will develop some amount of support for us. So the thieves they are, they sent in their people, stole them, they claim some little padlock damage and can't be found, but they can't find 11 barrels. That's the nature of the PPP.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Please, Mr. Jones.
No, go ahead.
There was a smash at Victoria last night. Town leader, do you propose to visit the community, perhaps to commiserate with the
Yes.
or something?
Yes, I will. I would normally do that, and I will.
All right, and for Mr. Jones. Sir, you were at the meeting with the U.S. Congressman from the Ways and Means Committee. You want to share some insight, sir? Or
I will invite the leader of the opposition to share. He was present at the meeting as well.
We did issue a press release, and we did outline to the Ways and Means Committee our approach to governance in Guyana, indicating that we will reverse this bad governance. We have indicated to them that we believe that there should be a level playing fields for investors to invest, and that our institutions need to be independent and working. We have said that to them. We have outlined to them our concerns about discrimination in Guyana, and we have outlined to them our vision for Guyana moving forward, among other things.
All right. That answer your question, Mr. Harris?
I can live with that. I can live with that.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
I see Ms. Garnett touch your hand up. You got it, Chef?
Yeah, I'm not going to her. Ms. Garnett, go ahead, please. Tamika?
Hi, everyone. A follow-up to a question on the situation in Region 9 and the building. Mr. Norton mentioned legal proceedings. Can we get a bit more details on, has the opposition filed any filings in the court? Is there an injunction against anyone doing anything with the building? What's the state of the legal proceedings as pertains to
I don't recall saying we file legal proceedings. I think we recall saying that the police need to investigate. I recall saying that they have trumped up charges against members of our party. So I'm not sure which part of the sky this idea dropped from, that we said we will take legal proceedings, and the word injunction never came in to the language I've been using here, even though I say we haven't excluded any option. All the options are on the table, and as we take the options, they will be revealed to the public.
No, you said you would seek recourse through the law. That is what I'm really asking about. When you say you seek recourse through the law, what does that mean for your party?
It means utilizing the law to use every option that is available to get legal redress.
So has anything been done in that direction as yet?
We are, as a party, we tend to tell the public when we do things, and whenever we do it, it will be told.
Any follow-up, Ms. Garnett?
No, that's okay. Thank you very much. That was good enough for me.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, we'd like to thank you very much for being part of the Leader of the Opposition's weekly press conference. I would like to thank the members of the panel, Mr. Elson Lowe, Mr. Reyes Rupnarain, Comrade Hamilton Green, and of course the Leader of the People's National Congress Reform and Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Aubrey C. Norton. My name is Christopher Jones. Thanking you very much for joining us today, and we do look forward to seeing you at our next weekly press conference. Have a pleasant rest of your day. Goodbye for now.